Between 2020 and 2025, over 10,000 rural land transactions in 5 specific American states were made by buyers who don't live there, have never lived there, and in most cases, have never even visited. They paid cash. They used legal structures designed to make them invisible. And when you pull the county deed records and map every single purchase, a pattern appears that I can't explain away. These aren't random. They're clustered. 5 states, specific counties within those states, and the buyers from Silicon Valley, executives to a 34-year-old school teacher in Ohio, are all selecting land based on the same set of criteria, as if someone handed them all the same checklist. Nobody handed them a checklist, but they're all reading the same data: water tables, agricultural census reports, FEMA disaster maps, nuclear target proximity files that have been declassified since the Cold War, but that most Americans have never opened. And when you overlay all of that onto a map of the United States, 5 regions light up. Just 5 out of 3.8 million square miles. I spent 4 months on this. I pulled deed records from 23 counties. I cross-referenced USDA agricultural data, EPA water reports, population density projections, and energy infrastructure maps. Today, I'm going to show you the 5 states, who's buying, how they're hiding, and the 8 characteristics every single one of these properties shares. By the end, you'll understand what these people figured out, and you'll be able to look at your own location and know exactly where you stand. The 8 things every property has in common. Every property in this analysis shares 8 characteristics. Think of these as a filter. Run any piece of land through them, and you'll know whether it's a viable long-term position or a liability disguised as real estate. Water that doesn't depend on anyone else. Not municipal, not piped from a reservoir. 60 mi away through infrastructure. Nobody's budgeted to repair. Water from the ground beneath the property. Springs, wells, aquifers, creeks fed by snowmelt. This was the single non-negotiable in every transaction I analyzed. Not one exception. Soil that actually grows food. Real agricultural capacity, the right hardiness zone. Enough topsoil, a growing season long enough to produce calories. The USDA publishes soil quality maps at the county level. These buyers are reading them. Most Americans don't know they exist. The right number of neighbors. Too few and you can't form a functioning community. Too many and you're competing for resources that run out fast. The properties sit between 20 and 80 people per square mile. Enough for a volunteer fire department. Not enough for a food riot. Distance from nuclear targets. The declassified target maps are free to download. Every buyer in this analysis appears to have checked them. The land is consistently well outside the consequence radius. Not near it, well outside it. Low natural disaster frequency. Some counties have had 30 federal disaster declarations in 20 years. Some have had 2. The purchases cluster in the second category. Energy independence. That's actually legal. Some states fined when you for disconnecting from the grid. Others protect your right to do it. That legal distinction is worth more than any solar panel. Communities that already function without outside help. Not communities that could theoretically learn. Growing food, sharing equipment, staffing their own fire departments. That takes generations to build. You can't install it during a crisis. State governments that treat your land as yours. Low property taxes. No water rights laws letting the state claim rain on your roof. No pattern of seizing private property when it becomes politically useful. 8 characteristics. Every property passes all 8. Now let me show you where. Number 5, Missouri. The play nobody saw coming. You were expecting Montana, maybe Idaho, some compound in the Rockies with a private airstrip and a billionaires, name hidden behind 3 shell companies. Missouri is on this list for one reason that matters more than scenery. It's the last state where this strategy is affordable for normal people. In the Ozarks, Shannon, Texas, and Howell counties, land prices have climbed 35 to 45% in 5 years. But the price isn't the interesting part. The speed is. Small parcels, 20 to 80 acres, are selling at twice the national average pace, listing on a Tuesday and under contract by Friday, in counties where properties used to sit for 8 months without a single showing. And here's what makes Missouri different from every other state on this list. The buyers aren't hiding. Almost no LLC purchases, no trust structures. These are families from St. Louis and Kansas City and Chicago, who realized they could buy 30 acres with a spring-fed creek for under $100,000. That is less than a down payment on a house in the city they're leaving. What most people don't realize about the Ozarks is the hydrology. This region sits on a karsted limestone system that acts as a natural filtration and storage network. Springs here aren't seasonal. They don't depend on rain every month. They don't dry out in summer heat. They are constant flowing systems, fed by deep underground pressure for thousands of years. Some of these springs produce thousands of gallons per minute. The flow is not small or symbolic. It is industrial-scale natural output, enough to support entire communities without a single external pipeline. You're not buying land with water access. You're buying land that is a water source. That difference changes everything. Ownership becomes survival, and survival becomes independent. The growing season stretches to 200 days in southern counties. That means long, productive agricultural cycles. Corn, beans, squash, fruit trees all thrive. Soil quality supports continuous farming. Food production becomes stable and predictable. But the real advantage is something you can't see on a map. It is not soil, not water, not climate alone. It is human structure built over generations. Communities that function without outside systems. A survival culture already in place. These are multi-generational rural communities, where mutual aid is not theory, it is habit. Neighbors respond before you ask for help. Support systems are automatic, not planned. Built over 150 years of lived experience. Volunteer fire departments exist as necessity, not organization. Church networks distribute supplies quietly. Neighbors arrive with tools before emergencies escalate. It is a system without central command. But it works because it is cultural. This social infrastructure cannot be built quickly. It cannot be imported from cities. And it cannot be installed during crisis. It takes generations of trust and repeated shared survival. Building codes outside incorporated areas are minimal. That allows flexibility in construction. People adapt structures to survival needs, not bureaucratic standards, but practical reality. Property taxes are low enough to hold land long-term, even without high-income pressure. That changes ownership psychology completely. Land becomes generational, not temporary. A long-term asset instead of a burden. Missouri's weaknesses keep it at number 5. It is not a perfect solution. It is a starting point, with real but limited security advantages and very real environmental risks. Whiteman Air Force Base hosts the B-2 fleet. It is a strategic military installation and also a confirmed nuclear target category zone. That changes regional risk calculation, even if indirect. The Ozarks are 100 to 150 miles south. That distance reduces direct exposure, but does not eliminate all risk. Survival probability improves, not guarantees. It is a margin, not immunity, and the terrain itself creates hidden risks. Valleys look peaceful from above, but they behave differently in heavy rain. Water moves fast through narrow channels, turning calm streams into dangerous force. These flash floods can form in under 2 hours. Without warning in many cases, rivers become walls of moving water. Infrastructure becomes vulnerable quickly. Most buyers underestimate this risk. Most people don't learn this until their first spring, when seasonal changes reveal terrain behavior. Reality replaces assumptions very quickly, and preparation becomes necessary immediately, not theoretical anymore. Missouri is the entry point state, where affordability meets opportunity. For families earning around $70,000 a year, real land ownership becomes possible. Without extreme capital requirements, it allows first steps toward self-sufficiency, but not maximum resilience. It is a transition zone, not a final position, for those building upward. But buyers with more resources are moving further, toward states with wider margins of safety, lower population density and higher control, stronger environmental stability, and deeper geographic insulation. Number 4, West Virginia. Washington's escape hatch. A different type of strategy emerges here, closer to power centers, but hidden in terrain. Balancing access and isolation. Why would someone who works within 60 miles of the United States capital quietly buy 100 acres of mountain land 3 hours west, install a well, a solar array, and a reinforced structure, and then describe it as a weekend property? That question defines this entire region. That's happening in Greenbrier, Pocahontas, and Pendleton counties. Land transactions are increasing rapidly. Prices have risen significantly over recent years. Out-of-state buyers now dominate many purchases. The pattern is consistent across regions. A growing number of buyers are using Virginia and Delaware registered entities. Legal structures are becoming more complex. Ownership is often hidden behind multiple layers, similar to large corporate real estate deals. Not typical rural purchasing behavior. These aren't homesteaders looking for cheap land. They are professionals with security backgrounds. Threat assessment experience shapes their decisions. Infrastructure costs exceed land value itself. This indicates strategic planning. They position themselves at a very specific distance from the capital, close enough for rapid access if needed, far enough to avoid direct impact zones. Outside major blast and fallout modeling ranges, balance between proximity and safety. When people trained to evaluate threats start buying land in the same geography, it is not coincidence. It is data expressed through action. Behavior reveals belief systems, and belief systems reveal risk assessment. The Appalachian geology creates a distributed water system. Thousands of independent springs exist across the region, each formed by natural fractures in rock layers. No single central source controls water supply. It is inherently decentralized. Each hollow has its own water emergence point. Each valley functions independently. There is no single failure point in the system. This creates natural redundancy. Engineers spend billions trying to replicate this. West Virginia received this advantage from geology alone. Not design, not planning, not infrastructure. Pure natural formation over millions of years. A decentralized system built by the earth itself. Unintentional but highly effective. The privacy advantage is equally significant. Terrain creates natural isolation between properties. Ridge lines block visibility completely. Many locations are invisible from main roads. Separation is built into the landscape. Properties are often invisible from main roads. You can drive past them without noticing. Dense terrain hides structures completely. Natural elevation blocks direct line of sight. Privacy is built into geography itself. Cell coverage drops only a few miles off highways. Signal strength disappears quickly in valleys. Communication becomes unreliable in many zones. This creates natural isolation pockets, both a limitation and a feature. Most people see this as a disadvantage. No internet, no stable connection, no access. But the buyers in this analysis see it differently. They treat it as intentional separation, not a flaw but a filter. Dead zones are not considered a problem here. They are a selection criteria. Areas without constant digital presence, where systems cannot easily track activity, privacy by environmental design. Agriculture is the main limitation of the region. Short growing seasons restrict crop cycles. Elevation reduces available farmland. Flat land is limited and valuable. Food production requires adaptation. At higher elevations, the growing season is about 130 days. That requires precise planning and timing. Gardening becomes a technical skill, not casual or experimental. Survival-based agriculture. Food production is possible but requires expertise. Raised beds, greenhouses, and preservation systems are common. Root cellars and storage methods are essential. Nothing is left to chance. Efficiency determines survival. This knowledge exists within local communities already. It is passed through experience, not theory. Generations have refined these methods. Newcomers must learn quickly to adapt. Integration takes time. Community bonds are strong but selective. Trust is not automatic for newcomers. Relationships are built over time. Reliability matters more than background. Actions define acceptance. West Virginia becomes the insider's choice, a place chosen by those who study risk deeply. Not for comfort, but for positioning. Not for lifestyle, but for structure. A calculated geographic decision. Number 3, Tennessee. The 300-year play begins here. This is not short-term land buying. It is generational planning, structured across centuries, not years. To understand Tennessee, you need financial engineering. Not just geography or agriculture, but legal structures that span generations, designed to preserve ownership over time, without erosion from taxation cycles. The Tennessee Dynasty Trust allows land to last 360 years, without probate interruptions, without estate tax fragmentation. Ownership remains continuous across generations. A legal structure built for permanence. In normal inheritance systems, assets shrink over time. Each generation loses a percentage to taxation. Land holdings gradually break apart. Families end up with fractions of original property. Dilution is the default outcome. The Dynasty Trust reverses that process. Instead of losing value, it preserves it. Instead of fragmentation, it maintains unity. Land compounds rather than decays. A rare legal asymmetry in modern systems. On the Cumberland Plateau, prices are rising fast. Grundy, Van Buren, and Bledsoe counties are active zones. Competitive bidding is becoming common. Cash offers dominate transactions. Market behavior is shifting rapidly. Parcels between 50 and 200 acres are in high demand. Multiple buyers compete for single listings. Offers exceed asking prices frequently. This is not normal rural market behavior. It reflects long-term strategic interest. Tennessee stands out for agriculture. The growing season extends up to 210 days. Soil quality supports diverse crops. Farming viability is consistently high. Food production is structurally reliable. But the real asset is not soil alone. It is human knowledge embedded in communities. Generations of farming experience still active. Skills passed from grandparents to grandchildren. Agricultural memory still intact. This knowledge cannot be bought instantly. It cannot be replicated quickly. It requires cultural continuity over time and lived agricultural experience, not theoretical understanding. Tennessee's farming culture goes back centuries. It is not newly developed knowledge. It is inherited through generations, practices refined over long periods of time, still actively used today. Unlike most of modern America, this knowledge was not lost. Industrial farming did not fully replace it here. Small communities still maintain traditional methods. Seasonal planting and livestock rotation remain common. Agricultural continuity is preserved. Families still know how to preserve food without electricity. Canning, drying, and root storage remain normal skills. Livestock management is community-based. Crop cycles are planned collectively in many areas. Survival knowledge is practical, not theoretical. Tennessee also has dense networks of heritage seed preservation. These are not commercial seed systems. They are genetic preservation efforts by farmers, maintaining crop diversity outside industrial agriculture. Resilient plant varieties are prioritized. These seed banks protect older crop genetics. Varieties designed for survival, not transport efficiency. Plants that can adapt to changing conditions and resist environmental stress naturally, a form of biological insurance. Livestock breeding follows similar principles. Animals are selected for resilience, not mass production. Hardy breeds survive without industrial systems. Minimal external veterinary dependence. Self-sustaining agricultural cycles. If supply chains were disrupted, these systems would still function because they are not dependent on global infrastructure. They operate locally and independently. Knowledge is already embedded in practice, not stored in manuals. Water resources are also widely available. Rainfall exceeds 50 inches annually in many regions. Multiple rivers and springs support agriculture. Water access is naturally distributed, not centrally controlled. Community structures function as parallel systems. Farming cooperatives operate informally. Mutual aid networks are deeply embedded. Support happens without official coordination. It is cultural infrastructure. The regulatory environment supports independence. Low property taxes and minimal restrictions exist. Land ownership is relatively flexible, and long-term holding is financially viable. This strengthens generational planning. Number 2, Idaho, where money goes when it stops pretending. This is not casual land buying anymore. It is strategic withdrawal, built on invisibility and distance. If Missouri is entry-level affordability, and Tennessee is generational planning, Idaho is capital at scale. Serious buyers with serious resources, and zero interest in visibility. Outside the Boise corridor, land prices surged dramatically. Demand increased over recent years. Out-of-state buyers dominate transactions. Local inventory moves quickly. The market is under pressure. In counties like Lemhi and Custer, patterns are extreme. Large acreage purchases dominate listings. Hundreds to thousands of acres at a time, often through layered legal entities, designed to obscure ownership. Wyoming LLCs and Nevada trusts are commonly used. Multi-layer ownership structures are standard practice, not for tax alone, but for invisibility. To remove personal identity from land records, legal separation is intentional. Some buyers are tech executives. Publicly, they advocate dense urban living. Privately, they acquire remote ranches. This contradiction is consistent across profiles. Behavior differs from public messaging. These properties are not vacation homes. They are infrastructure investments. Airstrips, power systems, water independence, designed for operational readiness, not recreational use. Snake River and mountain snowpack provide stable water. Hydrological systems are naturally reliable. Central highlands are extremely sparsely populated. Large distances between settlements exist. Isolation is structural. Rural Idaho culture already assumes self-reliance. Off-grid living is not unusual here. It is a default lifestyle in many areas. Equipment, skills, and mindset already exist. Independence is normalized. Small-scale hydroelectric systems are common here. Mountain streams generate consistent power. Gravity-based energy systems operate year-round, independent of fuel or grid stability. Energy becomes locally sourced. Idaho's weakness is the growing season. In high elevations, it can drop to 90 days. That limits year-round agriculture. Food production requires adaptation and careful seasonal planning. Ranching works well in these conditions, but plant-based food systems need support structures. Greenhouses become essential. So does storage and preservation. Survival depends on preparation. Wildfire risk is another major factor. Dry summers increase fire intensity each year. Forested regions are especially vulnerable. Conditions are becoming more extreme and less predictable over time. Fire defense becomes a core design requirement. Clear land buffers are necessary. Structures must be planned defensively. Water access becomes critical infrastructure. Risk management is constant. Tornadoes are not part of the threat profile here. That simplifies certain risk calculations, but replaces them with fire dynamics. Every region has trade-offs. None are risk-free. What makes Idaho unique is the honesty gap. Public narrative and private action diverge sharply. People speak one story publicly, but invest in a different reality. The data reveals this split. Some of the most vocal urban advocates are also private landowners in remote Idaho. This contradiction is not rare. It appears repeatedly in records. Behavior reveals true priorities. Idaho becomes a quiet accumulation zone. Large land holdings increase over time, often without public attention. Slow consolidation of acreage, driven by long-term strategy. The cultural advantage is long-standing. Rural independence is already normalized. Skills are passed through practice, not introduced externally. This creates resilience by default. Idaho passes most structural filters, but not all environmental constraints. It is powerful but not perfect. Strong in independence, weaker in agriculture timing, a calculated trade-off state. Number 1, Montana. The consensus answer. Across all buyer categories, from billionaires to professionals, everyone ends up here eventually. I expected Montana to rank high, but not to dominate every category. The consistency was surprising. Across income levels and professions, the pattern was universal. Western counties saw extreme price increases. Flathead, Gallatin, and Ravalli lead the trend. Values have doubled in recent years. Properties now sell in weeks, not years. Market structure has changed completely. Now the second wave is moving east. Fergus, Judith Basin, and Petroleum counties. Land that once sat untouched for years is now being acquired rapidly. Wealth is spreading across geography. The buyer profile here is highly sophisticated. Family offices manage multi-generational wealth. Structures involve multiple legal layers. Wyoming LLCs owning Montana entities designed for extreme privacy. This is not just investment activity. It is ownership restructuring at scale, a quiet transfer of land control, hidden from public attention, but visible in records. Former military and intelligence professionals are also present. Their purchase patterns are highly specific. They avoid scenic areas. They prioritize concealment and access control. Their choices are operational. They look for multiple water sources. They prefer terrain with natural cover. Road visibility and choke points matter. These are not recreational decisions. They are strategic assessments. Montana's water system is unmatched. Glaciers and snowpack feed major rivers. Aquifers remain largely untouched. Water quality is naturally high and systemically independent. Everything else becomes secondary here, because water defines survival potential, and Montana has abundance built into geology. Not engineered, but naturally formed. An asset older than infrastructure itself. Montana has no fatal flaw in the data set. Every other state has at least one ceiling: climate, population, or infrastructure limits. But Montana balances all variables differently. That is what makes it dominant. Even the weakness growing season is partially offset. Ranching culture compensates for climate limits. Food preservation is deeply embedded, and daylight hours extend productivity. Nature balances its own constraints. Population density is extremely low, one of the lowest in the continental United States. Entire regions have fewer than one person per square mile. Distance becomes a structural advantage, not just geography. In a displacement scenario, geography matters more than politics. Movement follows roads and fuel availability. Montana's terrain blocks large-scale access, not because of defense systems, but because of physical distance. Natural disaster exposure remains low overall. Wildfires exist but are regionally contained. Tornado activity is almost non-existent. Earthquake risk is minimal. Federal disaster frequency is below average. Energy independence is already practiced here. Hydroelectric, solar, wind, and wood systems coexist. Off-grid living is not unusual. It is part of local tradition, not a modern experiment. But there is a cultural boundary. Longtime residents value usefulness over wealth. You do not earn respect through money alone. Contribution matters more than status. This shapes social integration. New arrivals who fail to integrate struggle socially. Wealth alone does not guarantee acceptance. Practical value defines relationships. This creates a self-regulating social system. Stable but selective. What emerges is a complete system analysis. Water, land, population, and risk all align. Each state reflects a different strategy, but all are part of one pattern, a national reallocation of land behavior. Someone is buying land in 5 states. Cash transactions, hidden structures, silent movement. Not panic, but calculation. Not survivalism, but strategy. The question is not what they know. It is what you will do next.